Welcome back to another episode of Light Beer, Dark Money. I'm Sean Noble.
I'm Chris Clements.
We are honored. This is the
really
Godfather,
honored.
right? So Morton Blackwell from Leadership Institute is our honored guest today. Chris, this is your...
So the way this came about was really interesting because I saw you on a podcast with Kevin Gentry, not just a couple weeks ago. And I reached out to Kevin and I go, how did that happen? He told me, and then I decided to just ask Kathy, your assistant, whether you'd be willing to do this podcast. And I was so happy that you
Chris,
agreed.
I'm available. Happy to be here.
No, it's fantastic. And just so our viewers, our listeners know, so my first job out of college was working for this gentleman here. And I learned more in that time than almost any other job that I had. Most of all, how to write well and how to write clearly and concisely and in the active voice, which when you're a poli-sci major coming out of the University of Southern California, you have no idea what that is. You have absolutely no clue what that is.
Supposed to learn that in high school.
I know, and unfortunately I did it. And
most people don't. The educational system is in a long period of decline.
Yes, but that writing technique has guided me throughout everything I've done, both politics and business, and I look at different publications so much differently now because of the time I had at the Leadership Institute.
Well, and I think that it's communication is so important when it comes to policy, to persuasion, to politics. And I mean, you have been a master at that. I mean, you've trained, tens of thousands of us in the world.
Since I founded the Institute in 1979, we have trained more than 340,000 students.
And that's just the ones that actually went through your program.
Right.
I mean, there's been many others who have been, impacted by your training that have then gone on to, train others on their own. I mean,
I call that process movement building. We train people, and you can't measure the effectiveness of an educational project immediately after it's done because your achievement is in the long-term behavior and achievements of the people you train.
Well, I think that, as I look at it, it seems remarkable looking back. In 1979, when you started the Leadership Institute, it's impossible to believe that you could look back, you look forward into the future of 2025 and see what you've done. I mean, it is absolutely remarkable.
Well, you're kind to say that. When I organized the Leadership Institute in 1979, essentially every conservative educational foundation was focusing on the important matter of teaching about issues and philosophy and public policy questions. And many of those people disdained the idea of studying philosophically neutral skills, how you communicate, how you recruit, how you organize, how you can appear well on television, etc. And I thought that that's what I could do that was best. I had a long record of training, particularly training college students, and I saw that it was important. If you're going to have an effective movement, you want to have a lot of people who are philosophically sound, technologically proficient, and movement-oriented. I was Barry Goldwater's youngest elected delegate. In those days, the idea of studying how to win was not widespread. In fact, the slogan of the Goldwater campaign was, "In your heart, you know he's right." And a lot of people thought it was beneath their dignity to study philosophically neutral skills. But the point is that in order to win, conservatives needed to dramatically increase the number and effectiveness of conservative activists and leaders. And even if you organize and train people where they're straight arrow, philosophically committed conservatives, limited government, free enterprise, strong national defense, and traditional values. They can have a good grasp about the issues, but if they don't know how to organize and communicate and raise funds, they're not going to be very effective. And so that's what I try to do. And I started the Institute, for a time it was just me as a volunteer, and then I hired an executive director. And I continued my training the 3 years I was on Ronald Reagan's White House staff, and I left at the end of January 1984 to build the Leadership Institute. And we've had considerable success, constant growth. The last 5 years have been spectacular in growth, both in terms of the number of people we train and in the terms of our revenue. Last year we trained 43,000 people.
Wow.
Last year our revenue was $49.9 million. So it's a big operation, and we're still in the process of growth. And I'm very happy that the success that I had persuaded other conservative organizations that really, to be most effective, they needed to do some training themselves. And I've always encouraged that any conservative group wanting to start training, I try to help them put together a strong training program. Fact is, I aim to build a movement, not an empire.
Yeah. You always said a well-funded movement takes care of its own, and you've espoused that in terms of sharing the training, like you said, and the technology that you've developed with the movement. And it wouldn't be the same, I think, without the Leadership Institute.
Well, and it is actually something that is missing a lot in our movement is the generosity that you provide in saying, yes, come do the same thing that I'm doing. I'm going to help you do it. So many times in our movement, we have people that say, oh, it's my thing. You can't do that. And yet you've broken the mold in that regard and said, look, rising tide lifts all boats. And that has been one of the things that I have appreciated the most over the last 30 years as I've watched the Leadership Institute, participated in trainings, done trainings. I mean, it is amazing to me how selfless the Institute is, and it's because of your leadership, is to anybody who wants to try to do better in the conservative movement.
Right. Well, in order to have our tax-free status, a 501c3 group, we've established a policy from the outset that we have an open admissions policy. Anybody who applies will accept at our training programs. But we recruit among conservatives, and it works out very well. Every now and then, some person comes by and confesses they're a left-winger, and are a little surprised when we say we welcome you into our training. But the big problem that I faced, and the problem will never be completely solved, is this concept, which I call the Sir Galahad theory. I will win because my heart is pure. And that results in disappointments and sometimes disillusionment. Many people who were in the Goldwater campaign who believed that when Goldwater left, they dropped out of politics completely because they expected they would win because they knew they could prove they were right, and therefore somehow victory was going to fall into their deserving hands like a ripe fruit off of a tree. But that's not how the real world works. And so many people across the conservative movement now understands that we all owe it to our philosophy to study how to win. And most political technology is philosophically neutral. I mean, the hard left does things for political effect which are immoral, illegal, and disgusting. So not all techniques are philosophically neutral, but we teach defensible, hard effectiveness, but we don't advocate that anybody do the rotten things that the left does.
Right.
So much of what the leadership has grown into is candidate education, and and teaching people how to win within that
Yep.
framework. And I can't tell you how many people I encounter who want to run for office, and the first thing I tell them is go to the Leadership Institute. And when they don't, because they feel, oh, I have a good team, I've got good consultants.
Yeah.
How, in your experience, I mean, how have you seen that the consultant class kind of take over Republican conservative politics and put candidate training
Well,
off to the side?
there are excellent consultants who are themselves conservative, but this is not a new problem in politics.
Yes.
From the time I first got active in politics, there were always consultants who would latch on to a candidate who had wealth or who could raise a lot of money. They would say, we can help you win. And they would proceed to focus the whole budget of the campaign on commissionable advertising. And if you would ask, how is your precinct organization going? The consultant would say, oh, that's old-fashioned. And let me show you these commercials that a winning client of ours showed on TV 2 years ago. But there are a lot of people who realize that consultants like that are simply looting the candidate. You have to have a good communications operation in a campaign, but you also have to build a network of effective activists and leaders in order to be really successful in a close race.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, I mean, when you look at that, you have a lot of candidates who are now congressmen, senators.
Right, I'll give you the numbers.
Yeah.
After the 22 election, we had 28 members of the House of Representatives who were graduates of our schools. That doesn't count members who had graduates of our schools as campaign managers or like 28 incumbents after 22 election and 3 United States senators. After the 2024 elections, we now have 37 members of the House of Representatives and 4 United States senators who themselves are graduates of our training. So it takes a while for a program like this to grow, and with success comes a better reputation, better recruitment for your training, and more financial support from conservative donors who want to spend their money in a way that will affect the public policy process.
Well, I think just from talking with your staff yesterday, there seems to be an upswell of donors who are tired of losing. They want to win, and they see your programs as the pathway of not only winning, but not replicating some of the failed programs of other party politics.
Well, the conservative movement has come around to a large extent. And I've been lecturing this, and our training programs stress it, that you got to do away with this idea that if you can prove you're right, that you're going to win. I mean, the Sir Galahad theory, I will win because my heart is pure, that really doesn't work. And so success has bred success. Now, there's some concern about this year, 2024, because back in 1981, there had been great growth in the conservative movement through the 1970s. Small groups became large groups. National Right to Work Committee went from 25,000 members in 72 to 1.9 million in 79. And so there was a substantial conservative movement. In 1981, Reagan was president. And a lot of conservatives said, well, the problems are solved. I don't have to make contributions. So many, if probably most conservative groups had a reduction in their revenue in 1981 because of that. It's too early in the year to ascertain what is happening there, but I imagine that most conservative groups are having trouble raising as much money this year as they did in last year. We have yet to see it. For the Leadership Institute, we just did a calculation this just this morning I got the information that we are slightly ahead in terms of fundraising compared to the budget that we had for this year. But I think we may be unusual in this regard. You have to make the case now to donors who are thrilled with what Trump has done and thrilled with conservatives being able to dominate by a narrow margin both the House and the Senate. But traditionally, in midterm elections, the party of the president loses a lot of seats in the Congress. And so I think it's very important for conservative donors, if you are currently contributing to organizations, that you not let up on your contributions this year, because it's going to be a tough year next year, and it's possible to gain strength for conservatives, but it's not going to be easy.
Yeah. Now's the time to double down.
Yeah,
For sure.
yeah, and not rest on our laurels.
Right.
For sure. So you're not slowing down anytime soon.
No.
And the Leadership Institute's not slowing down. How do you see your legacy going forward, and the growth of the Institute going forward?
Well, I think that I set about to do something that I've achieved, and that is to persuade many highly intelligent, deeply committed conservatives that knowing that you're right, thinking that you could prove that you're right, is not sufficient to win, and that you have a moral obligation to study the skills and techniques that can lead you to victory. And that if you don't do it, it's your own fault, probably, because you haven't studied how to win.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, that's an important lesson for everyone in the movement.
It's a lesson that changed the politics of our country.
Yeah.
And there are now dozens of substantial conservative organizations, some of them focused on a narrow range of public policy questions, others of them conservative across the board, and we've got momentum now. So I expect the Leadership Institute to continue after I'm gone and be stronger than ever, but I'm thrilled at the growth of the movement, which has been continuous now for a long time.
Well, it's because of my time at the Institute and my time around conservative circles. And when people ask me, well, you're a Republican, right? And I say, no, I'm not. And they look at me kind of cross-eyed. I go, no, I'm a conservative, and I'm a movement conservative first. And that has to do with a lot of what I learned at
Well, most
Leadership
conservatives choose to be in the Republican Party. The number of conservatives who are still in the Democratic Party is small, because the the left operation has taken control of the Democrat Party, and
Right.
we see disarray among the Democrats. But whatever comes out of that is going to be a hard left party.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Morton, we can't thank you enough for taking the time to impede your wisdom and to you're an icon to many of our listeners. You've been a core part of the success of this movement. There's no question.
Well, it hasn't been, I don't consider that a great sacrifice, because I've always loved what I'm doing. I go to a Republican National Convention and I walk up an aisle, and the delegates are up there, and people down the row will stand up and rush to me and tell me, I attended your school in 2010 and it changed my life. Thank you very much. So I get lots of reinforcement from this. No way I can know 340,000 people that have been trained. Used to be I attended every Leadership Institute school, and now we do hundreds every year, and I can't do that, but I have wonderful employees, and most of our training is done by volunteer lecturers. We find conservatives who've had success in a particular area of political activity and persuade them to come teach at our school. So we have a wonderful faculty, the vast majority of whom are volunteers.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
great.
Well, we've done some of that
Yeah.
in Arizona with some of your schools, and
Well,
have enjoyed every minute of it.
Yeah. Thank you again. For people who want to help and get involved, leadershipinstitute.org.
Yes.
Leadershipinstitute.org. There you'll see complete listing. We now are running, I think, 58 different types of training schools. I don't pretend that we're covering every single possible element of technology, but we have a broad coverage on campaign management and fundraising and communications. And we teach lessons so that a conservative who gets active doesn't have to learn all of his lessons through the school of hard knocks.
Right.
You don't have time in your life to make every mistake. You can study and learn what has been shown to be effective and how to organize and how to communicate.
And if you're a young person wanting to get involved in conservative politics, the Youth Leadership School is still the best school that the Leadership Institute offers.
Yeah, that was our first school.
First school,
and it's a massive program. We send field representatives out to campuses, find conservative or libertarian students, and we encourage them to form chapters of any one of 16 different national groups that are conservative or libertarian and have campus chapters. And when we find a group of kids on a campus who want to become a chapter of one of these groups, we send their contact information to the group that they want to be a chapter of. And it's worked very well, and it has resulted in the Leadership Institute having, as you might expect, a really close relationship and friendship with almost all of these groups that have local campus chapters.
yeah. Well, you're training all of them, and it's
It's fantastic.
and the people who know.
Yep. That's right.
Well, thank you, Morton. Thanks for your
Thank you.
mentorship to so many of
Chris,
us.
it's a pleasure to see you again. You've had a great success in life, and you're plugging on forward and doing great things in the new field. So thank you.
No, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for listening. God
Take care.
bless.